Hello everyone, welcome to week number 4 in Bio 120. This week is all about cellular respiration and photosynthesis, and we'll get into that in just a minute. As soon as I get to the next slide, right? Okay, so last week, week 3, you learned about classification of organisms and life all the way from species level to the biosphere, including ecosystems, biomes, populations, etc. So they're all levels of classification of organisms. We learned about types of cells, prokaryotic cells, which include bacterial cells, and eukaryotic, which includes everything else besides bacteria. So plants, animals, fungi, protists, like algae, etc. So those are the eukaryotic cells. The cell structures and how important they are, especially when you're looking at an issue like antibiotics, where you want to kill bacteria but not kill human cells or animal cells, etc. So those cell structures are terribly important because we can target bacterial cell structures that we don't have. Antibiotic resistance, terribly important public health issue today because there is so much of it. We have lots of antibiotics, but bacteria become antibiotic resistant just about as fast as we can prescribe a new antibiotic. So a huge problem, and with some species, we are quickly running out of effective antibiotics. For this week, skim through. There's that word again, skim. So you're not going to read in great detail chapters 6, 7, and 8. Just skim through and figure out what is where and what the general topics are. Watch my video because this will condense down a whole lot of that information. And my video is on aerobic respiration. So what is respiration anyway? That is the way that organisms break down food to make energy molecules in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So aerobic respiration uses oxygen to help this breakdown, and it is a very efficient way to break down one molecule of glucose to give about 34 ATP molecules. Very, very efficient. That's why most organisms on the planet are aerobic. They use oxygen in order to produce energy. Then on the other hand, you have anaerobic respiration, which is a modified form of aerobic respiration, but no oxygen is involved. And you also have fermentation, which is a much shorter pathway where you make byproducts like lactic acid, alcohols, and those sorts of things. That's why you've heard of fermentation before. Okay, so watch my video so that you understand the difference between these. I'll make it make more sense than trying to understand everything in those chapters in your textbook. Read the Module 4 introduction and watch the video on the carbonated ocean. One side effect, side problem, we could call it a side problem, excessive carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is that the pH of the ocean is being lowered as we speak, and this is causing problems with organisms that live in the ocean. All right, what about your assignments this week? You have discussion board postings. You have 3 different things due this week. So discussion board postings. So here's your first question. Our photosynthesis, so what is photosynthesis? Because you learned this at some point, right? Photosynthesis is where some organisms on this planet make their own food in the form of glucose. And they do that how? By using sunlight energy. There's some bacteria that can do other things. But anyway, mainly uses sunlight energy. And then, well, how do you put molecules together to make the glucose? You put together water molecules and carbon dioxide molecules, and you make glucose by using sunlight energy. Versus cellular respiration, where you're breaking down a molecule of glucose to give you what? ATP molecules, but also what are the waste products? Water and carbon dioxide. Sound kind of similar, don't they? So this first question is, are photosynthesis and cellular respiration opposite or complementary processes? And then it says at the end, or both. All right, if you ever have a question like this, you know the answer is both. Otherwise, why would they add that or both part, right? Yeah. So it's got to be both. So you figure it out. You figure out how they are both opposite and complementary. You're also going to answer the question whether you consider autotrophs the foundation of all ecosystems. So what is an autotroph? Auto means self. Troph means feeding, self-feeding. That means the organisms on the planet that do photosynthesis. So are the photosynthesizers the foundation of all ecosystems? Anyone that you can think of. Then in your response post, remember that initial post is due by Thursday night. Your response post to 2 classmates are all about the excessive carbon dioxide that's being released into the atmosphere and its consequences. And that's why you need to watch that video on the carbonated ocean, and you know some of those other effects too. Then you have a journal entry. So this is a journal entry about aerobic versus anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration includes fermentation or anaerobic respiration, because those are 2 different things, but they're very similar. And how ancient glycolysis must be. Glycolysis is the first step in aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, and fermentation. I explained this in my video, so go watch that short video. And you're going to talk about ethanol being used as a biofuel and advantages to it and disadvantages to it. So that's your journal entry for this week. Okay, then you have another big assignment is coming. Here we go. Let me move my face over. Sorry, I just messed up the slides again. There we go. So you have milestone 2. You have completed milestone 1, which is all about the introduction to your topic and where it occurs and how it occurs. You remember all that, right? So the second milestone for your final project is the biology of your project. You know, this is a biology course. So the biology of your topic. So let's take a look at the sections that you need to include. And I'm going to point out things that are really important. Level of organization. So remember how we talked about classification and, you know, you go from a species all the way to the biosphere, right? Okay, so where does this problem happen in the world? So like climate change, where does that happen? Yeah, the whole biosphere. Everything, every ecosystem, every species on the planet is affected by climate change. And then if you look at a topic like eutrophication, then that's going to be particular waterways that are actually affected. That's a particular type of ecosystem. Or if you talk about genetically modified organisms, well, that definitely affects the species that are involved, that are having their genetics manipulated, but also ecosystems, because these are grown usually as crop plants. So what level of organization does your topic impact living things? Okay, give examples. Always give examples if you can. All right, then the analysis section. You got to pick 3 biological concepts, processes, ideas, topics that are essential to life that pertain to your topic. So let's say climate change, for example. You probably want to talk about the carbon cycle, how carbon cycles through everything in the whole planet, right? That's probably one thing that you want to mention. If you're talking about population ecology, you might want to talk about evolution, adaptations, things like that. You might want to talk about inheritance, if you're talking about GMOs and the importance of DNA and how that's used to produce traits in an organism. If you can't come up with these, please let me know, because I can help you with this. Because, of course, you don't know a lot of biology. Otherwise, you wouldn't be taking this class, right? So if you need help with B, the analysis section, and coming up with biological concepts, I can definitely help you with that. And we can just talk via email. Then, relationship to topic. Okay, then you take the carbon cycle, if you're doing climate change, and you explain how the carbon cycle and climate change interact with each other, how climate change affects the carbon cycle, right? The relationship to your topic of these 3 biological concepts. You're making the connection. So that section C is probably the most important section of all sections of your whole final project. You're making connections between your topic and biological process. And the characteristics of life, we covered this in week 1. Select one of the biological concepts and illustrate how the characteristics of life are affected by that. Impact on health. Describe the impact, both positive and negative, of one of those biological concepts, up in B up there, on either human health or environmental health or both. And always give real life examples. Anywhere you can, give examples, because this corroborates, this supports what you're talking about if you give examples. All right, and then, let's see if I can get to my next slide. There you go. My tip of the week is ask for help if you need help. This week you may need help. This week you may have questions. You may not understand respiration. It is a difficult topic to understand. That's why I made that extra video for you. You may not understand the difference between aerobic respiration and anything anaerobic. You may not be able to figure out your biological processes. All you have to do is ask for help. I'm here to help you. That's why you have an instructor, so that I can give you help when you get stuck. Otherwise, we would just tell you to read the textbook and do the assignments. So please ask me for help. m.sigmon@snhu.edu. There I am. This is a beautiful little bird that I saw over in Africa. It's called a malachite kingfisher. They're very hard to photograph, let me tell you. I took a bazillion pictures of them, but this is a great picture because the light was hitting it just right. So anyway, I hope that you have a wonderful week. Spring has sprung here in South Carolina. It's very nice weather right now, and I hope it is for you too. And I hope that you have a wonderful week. Please ask me if you need any help.